Hello and welcome to This is MediaCity. I'm Stephen Chapman and today I'm joined on the couch by, now I'm trying to get your job right because I'm putting you down, Alison Bell, as Manchester PR communications specialist. Basically, if I've got an event or something to do with music, the one call I make first is generally to you.
That'll be good.
But also, and the reason you're on the couch today is because you've got a brand new BBC Sounds podcast with Steve Lamacq about the rise and fall of Madchester. Alison, before we start talking about the podcast, your podcast, of course, we always start with some icebreaker questions, which are random questions, which could be anything. See, I'm shuffling as well, so even I don't know the order. Pick a card, any card, and see if it's something you can answer for me.
Okay. What's the last music you listened to?
That seems appropriate.
Well, oh gosh. Do you mean something that I've sort of deliberately played myself, or something? Because I have a lot of radio on in the background, and I'm always flicking from channels.
What did you deliberately press play on?
It would probably be the band that my son is in, Shango Bone, which of course I'm wearing the badge.
Yeah, for viewers.
Yeah,
there's a nice badge there for you.
So they're single. So I chose to listen to that. Yeah.
And are they doing gigs at the moment? Just in case?
They are. They're supporting Aura Cogan this weekend at Yes in Manchester. Then they're part of Stretfest the following week, which is a festival in Stretford. And I think they're doing Muse Fest, which is in the Great Northern. That's in late May.
Fab. And that means that you can go home and you're not in trouble for saying the wrong band then for a minute.
Yeah.
I'll give you one more question.
Okay. Favourite place to go outside of the Northwest? Well, that's easy. That's Cornwall, my hometown. Home county, I should say. Yeah.
Because we're going to come on to the podcast now, and it seems appropriate that we kind of start. We will come back to where you came from and why that is. But the reason you're on the couch today, and do you know what? If you are watching on YouTube or social media, I've actually brought down the 39 Pictures archive behind you to make you feel at home. There's a bit of Tony Wilson behind, some Hacienda stuff there as well. So you've got some stuff. You're doing a podcast co-hosting with Steve Lamacq, part of the Rise and Fall series. And this one is Madchester, which is very close to your heart, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I just got a call asking if I'd like to co-host with Steve, because obviously he's the main person behind the whole series, and he writes most of it. So I got the call and I thought, why not? I'll give it a go.
Well, you've hosted on radio before, though, haven't you? It's not your first, but it's a while ago, isn't it?
It was a really long time ago. It was we're talking late 80s on BBC Radio Manchester when Phil Corbell, John Piper and Joanne Cartwright were doing a show called Meltdown. It was a brand new show, and I happened to have written about it for the Polly newspaper, and I mentioned that. And
which should be Manchester Met now, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I'd written about a number of music shows that were going on in the Northwest, including Steve Barker's On the Wire programme, which I loved, and Tony Michaelides' show, and lots of others. And when I sort of submitted my article to the editor of Pulp, as it was called, the newspaper, he saw I'd mentioned Meltdown and said, well, why don't you go along, sit in and listen to what's going on there? So I did, and ended up, after a bit of time, co-presenting it and producing it. And it was a new music show, so it was great fun to do, and we were just left to our own devices. We could play whatever we wanted, which was great. So it was a mixture of genres. We'd pop into Piccadilly Records, Eastern Bloc, and they would lend us some imports for the show, as well as playing tunes that we'd been sent and tunes we'd chosen. So it was really good fun.
That sounds like fun. So let's go back to this new podcast then. Well, you get the call from Steve Lamacq, or Steve Lamacq's people, and it's about Madchester, which is really close to your heart. You were kind of I know you've talked about you came up from Cornwall, but you were at the heart of the hacienda and all the rest of it at that time,
Yeah,
weren't
but
you?
I suppose by the time the whole, I think the word Madchester came from the Bailey brothers, I gather, and then Tony Wilson kind of ran with it, the word, the phrase, and it's kind of late 80s to early 90s, that era. So I'd been in Manchester by then for quite a few years, but it did at the time. It did really feel like there was a spotlight on Manchester. And I'd just moved into the city centre to India House, and it was one of the few places. It's hard to believe now because obviously Manchester being what it is, I think there are 100,000 people or something like that. I'm not too sure the figures, but a lot of people now living there. Whereas at the time when I moved to India House, there were very few places. I think there were some flats called, I think it was Cromford Court above the Arndale, and maybe one other building. So I think at the time, I think it was about 89, there were about 200 or 300 people in the city centre in total. So it was new. And we really loved being in India House because you were right in the centre. It took us 5-minute walk down to the Hacienda and Boardwalk and everywhere else in the city centre. So it was brilliant, and it was a real creative hub at the time. There were a lot of writers living there, DJs, photographers, musicians, and obviously famously Noel Gallagher was there, so I knew Noel. And it was a good place to live.
And what was it like back then? Because I landed in Manchester when I mid-90s, so it was that the hacienda was still there, but it was kind of on its way
Dipping
out.
a bit, yeah.
We still had the boardwalk back then. It was 95. That would be Oasis's first album, second coming Stone Roses kind of era. But before that, but it still had that element of like you wouldn't go to the Northern Quarter unless you had some friends with you. Kind of, there was that element of danger about the city. So, is there an element that we needed something like the music to escape?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about it. It didn't feel dangerous, but I suppose it felt maybe it had an edge to it.
Yeah.
And like the Northern Quarter wasn't called the Northern Quarter; it was basically Oldham Street, wasn't it? Yeah, and there was Piccadilly Records and Eastern Bloc, Affleck's Palace,
Final Exchange,
and when Dry opened, Dry Bar, which was kind of like a bar version of the Hacienda, I guess. That really got things going around there, and also something I was talking about in the BBC podcast was the fact that Canal Street really got going. And that had a huge impact. The whole scene around there, the whole gay scene, because at that time I think there was just New York at one end and the Rembrandt at the other, but when Peter Dalton and Carol Ainsworth opened Mantos, it was a complete trailblazer. Mantos is called something else now, which I've forgotten the name, but that really set the tone. So there was that part of the city centre which was having such a knock-on effect, and loads more bars opened around that area, and subsequently Paradise Factory, the club, which had been Tony Wilson's factory building.
Office,
yeah.
It's a very expensive table.
Yeah. Yes, I remember that table. Yeah.
So when we're talking about the Madchester, the Rise and Fall in the podcast, you've got lots of Tony in there, Tony Wilson in there, some of the archive clips. You hear from quite a few people talking about the period. How big a thing was it? Living through it, did you feel that you were going through something? You mentioned, I think, on the first episode about that time when Ian Brown's not singing on Top of the Pops and holding his microphone above his head and that kind of thing. Did you realise why you were here?
Yeah, there was a moment. I think it is mentioned in the podcast where a lot of people, all of us, were talking about it in India House that we wanted to watch Top of the Pops because the Roses and the Mondays were both going to be on. That was quite exciting, and there were, it felt like it was a special time, and lots of guitar bands were going to clubs, which maybe wasn't such a big deal, such a big thing before that time. And so you can see why there was a lot of crossover in music that happened on the back of it all, really.
Because that, I suppose, would you say that was Madchester, that club guitar crossover then?
Yeah, I think that's kind of sums it up really, when a lot of different cultures were colliding. Yeah.
And
music cultures.
And the Hacienda arguably was one of the centres of that, with because you had the Mondays, Stone Roses hung out there, Noel Gallagher I think hung out there as well. So there was that kind of idea of all these kind of this mad mix. You had to fill a club, and you couldn't necessarily do that with a guitar band, I would imagine.
Yeah, I remember, I'm sure you do, I do remember seeing quite a few bands playing at the Hacienda, but I know from what I gather, the early days when it first opened, it was pretty empty. It was an empty club. But in the sort of mid to late 80s, when bands were playing there, I think most of the gigs were pretty well attended. Yeah.
The sound system wasn't always the best.
It wasn't always the best. No, it wasn't.
We do have this rose-tinted look of the Hacienda sometimes. I went there a few times. Not when it was mid-90s, probably kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, they had Ministry of Sound there and things like that. Over the, but yeah, it wasn't like you went there because of the sound, was it?
No, I think it was the sound that was fine when it was a club.
Yeah.
But it was very hit and miss when bands played there. Yes, you had to be standing in a particular place to get, for it to sound really good. Yeah.
And is it something? Is the? I mean, it might be in later episodes because they're not all out yet, are they? On your podcast, I think they're going.
Yeah,
they're gradually
I've
being
only
released
heard episode 1 myself.
Oh right,
actually.
okay.
Yeah, so to be honest.
But do you think some of that allure and some of that kind of the history of the Hacienda is because of? I don't want to use the word chaos, but you know what I mean. The fact that you've had New Order almost paying for it, or so keep telling us. Tony just being Tony Wilson, you wouldn't hire him as your accountant, for example.
I'd love for Tony to still be around, and he'd have all sorts of things to say and comment about it.
About 2 hours later, he'd still be answering.
Yeah. He was just so brilliant, so fascinating. We as our PR company, Red Alert, we were in the same building as him at one stage, and we used to share. This shows the time frame. So we had a photocopier. Sorry, they had a photocopier. We had a fax machine, and we'd use each other's. And but when we were promoting some of the stuff on Tony's the second Factory Records second time around, like the Space Monkeys, we always look forward to having meetings with him because it was just so entertaining. We hardly ever talked about the work. He'd just go off on a tangent and talk about all sorts. He was brilliant. Yeah.
And we do miss him, don't we? Because there was something about Tony that, even though, and I'm conscious of doing that myself, and here we look back a lot in Manchester at the moment, and Tony always used to look forward. We produced him on the Tube for Channel 4 radio many years ago, and he was constantly saying, right, we need to get a screamo on, we need to get this on, we need to get that, let's stop doing all this, we need to do something. We haven't got that kind of figure anymore. That as much.
It's true, because much as I've really enjoyed doing this, the Madchester podcast, and I think it will be nice memories for a lot of people from that era, but I think it'll be for young people, it will offer some history, obviously, but I'm not a nostalgia kind of person. I'm in the present, really. So I get that attitude completely, and but it's nice to recognise them and what an impact that period had on the city, and not just when I say the city of Manchester, Salford, Greater Manchester, the impact that time had on how things are today.
The exciting thing about that time was that you could go out and you'd, I'm going a little bit late here, but you could go out and you could hear the Stone Roses, and then you'd start going down a rabbit hole of who else you could go and see and watch, whether at the Night and Day or the Boardwalk, and people were supporting younger acts then, which I don't think we do quite as much now.
I think there's another wave at the moment, to be honest, and I'm not in tune with the whole scene like I would have been, 30, 40 years ago, whatever. But it does feel like there are a lot of new bands and new sounds that you wouldn't say a band sounds like a typical Manchester band at all now. I think it's much broader now, whereas there probably was a bit of a sound that you could identify that came from Manchester back in those days.
So the podcast is out now. I think the first 2 episodes are out, and I think they're going out all weekly. We're on the 19th. I think the next one's next week as well.
Yeah.
So there's a few, and you'll be going through. I think you started with finding out that Bernard Manning opened the Hacienda, which was slightly scary.
Yeah.
And then we've got other ones, I'm assuming, probably talking about a bit about the Happy Mondays and all that kind of stuff. Would that be right? Or
yeah, as I said, I've only heard episode 1, so and can't remember how it all sort of pans out. But there are some really good, like you said, some great archive interviews, as well as people talking about things now.
For Mike Pickering and people.
Mike Pickering, Ange Matthews from Hacienda, Steve Adge, Leo Stanley.
Was Stone Roses, wasn't he?
He tour managed them for years. Yeah, he's great. I'm sure I haven't heard his speech yet, but I know he's very entertaining. Yeah.
Let's talk about the now though, because we've talked about the past. The other day, you were promoting the stuff around the Brits and everything around the stuff around it. How was that?
So Liam Walsh and I worked together on quite a few projects, and that week was particularly busy for us because we were working on the 2-day Mad North marketing festival.
Yeah, so loads of advertising agencies, marketing agencies hanging out in
Aviva Studios. Yeah, it was great.
It all links back to Granada some way, doesn't it, Aviva?
It does. Yeah, it does. But so that was exciting, and that same week, like I said, was the first ever BRITS Fringe, and of course it's the first time ever the Brits have been in Manchester. They'll be back next year, and who knows, maybe other years. We'll see. But it was brilliant because we were working with Brighter Sound, the music charity to support young creative people, and it was brilliant working with their team, and they'd set up a lot of different events at different venues in the city, and there was a music showcase with Nadia Medulla, Third Culture, and Chloe Slater, which sort of culminated at New Century Hall. So it was a great week and quite tiring. And then we went to the Brits the following night. Yeah.
How was that?
Fantastic. I mean, some amazing performances.
And it's MoBe's coming up as well. Are you involved?
Yeah, I'm not involved, but it sounds fantastic. Yeah, it really does.
There's a lot of talk about the music industry at the high level. The guys selling out arenas and stuff like that are doing really well. Do you think we're kind of supporting the grassroots enough when it comes, because obviously the Brit Awards, it's these stadium fillers and stuff like that, but the Fringe kind of showed the other side of it too, and was you were supporting younger acts too, weren't you?
I think it's obviously with like the Music Venues Trust and things like that. I think that people are starting to acknowledge that it's essential to have these venues. And I gather there's a scheme where a lot of artists and a lot of venues, the bigger venues, are kind of starting to subsidise some of the smaller places, which I hope that'll continue and get bigger because, crucial to the scene.
I still think the most exciting thing is watching an amazing act in a small place rather than watching an amazing act in a big place.
Yeah.
Have you got, because you obviously you knew Noel Gallagher amongst others, right, in the early days. Am I right in I'm sure I read somewhere that you advised him on whether to call the band Oasis.
No, I didn't advise him. No. But I do remember, because I saw him all the time, because we didn't just live in the same building. We worked in the same building. It was a fantastic creative hub at the bottom of Rochdale Road, and it was just a building called 23 New Mount Street. And at the time, we had an office in there, as Red Alert Promotions. There was a radio station on the top floor. Various bands were based there. The Fall, James, who else? Lots of bands, to be honest. And SJM first set up there, SJM Promotions, who were obviously huge, Simon Moran. But yeah, it was and I think there were T-shirt printing businesses there and all sorts of things.
You had the full lot.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah. So, and of course in Spiral Carpet. So Noel. So sometimes I'd walk to work with Noel because we obviously lived in the same building, worked in the same building.
Because Noel started out as a roadie.
Yeah, for the Inspirals. Yeah. So they were based there, and I remember Noel asking if we'd go and see his brother's band Rain at the Boardwalk. So I went with Noel and his girlfriend at the time, Louise, and I'd say it's only like a 5-10 minute walk from India House to Little Peter Street where the Boardwalk was. And so we saw them, and on the way back, walking down Little Peter Street, Noel just obviously asking what I thought, and I said, well, Liam's a fantastic front man, but I'm not sure about the songs and whatever. And he just said, I think I'm going to join the band and give them all the songs I've been writing. I went, okay. And then a few weeks later, he just asked me what I thought of the name Oasis. I didn't come up with the name. God, no. And yeah,
the rest is history.
They kind of got quite well known.
Well, yeah. Did you kind of know his talent from that, or was it?
Yeah, and the members of the Inspiral Carpets obviously knew how clever he could play loads of instruments, and he was just super talented.
Do you think we're at a stage where we could have something like that ever again? Was that just a one-off, both a period of time in terms of how music was consumed, but also a period of time in terms of how Manchester was going through these massive changes?
I think it's so hard to say, because I guess on the back of the whole Madchester scene or time, there might have been a feeling that was starting to dip, or the people were looking elsewhere after a while. But then, like I say, Oasis came along. And of course, there's been other big bands since. So Elbow, I mean, there's quite a lot of big bands.
Yeah, it's one of those things. When seeing what's your favourite band, and you go, certainly in Manchester, we're so lucky with them.
Yeah, tons.
And so this is because we kind of started by you came from Cornwall originally, and so you're not a son or daughter of Manchester.
No, but I've lived here longer than Cornwall now, so yeah.
And was that the aim of your life? Was it always to work in the music and events space? Was there always this kind of idea, or was it life drove you this way?
Didn't have a goal whatsoever. Just drifted along. Still am.
You told me ages ago that you went up to Newcastle because of the tube.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well,
I suppose I was quite a music nerd when I was in my teens. And when the Tube was first on TV,
so that was Tyne Tees.
Yeah, the course that I'd applied for was a great course on paper and everything, but I thought, right, if I go to Newcastle, I've got to go to the Tube, I think when I first got to Newcastle, I was asking around, how do you go? How can you go along? And at the time, you had to send a postcard or a letter, and you had to write the name of some of the bands you ideally want to see, and you just sent it off. And I tried that about 3 or 4 times. I thought, this is not going to work. And so I wrote to the producer and said I was an art student, which obviously I was, and I said I'd really like to capture the inside of the Tube and have a music project. And she just said, yeah, come along. So I did. And I remember the first time going in the studio, and they sat me, because I had a sketchbook with me, and I just sat on the side of the stage when Chaka Khan was playing. I was just sitting in the corner kind of thinking, this is quite surreal, and pretending to draw. And then the producer, they were really kind. They just said I could come whenever I want, just to give them a call. And so I went quite a few times, but then changed courses and came to Manchester.
Is there because I'm thinking back over the last half hour, and we've mentioned so many bands and so many things, and the start of so many things you worked on, obviously the podcast you're doing as well. Is there an area when you always go back and go, oh, that was amazing, or oh, I can't believe I've done that?
Do you know what? I don't. Like I said earlier, I kind of think very much of now and what's going on now, and not even that far ahead. I just... It's just not me. I mean, if something comes up and I can look back and think, oh, yeah, that was good. But I just don't, I don't think back to a time and think, oh, that was amazing. I wish I could go back to that. I want to just enjoy the moment.
Just enjoy the moment. Yeah. So it almost seems wrong for me to follow up with what's next, because you don't know.
Yeah.
What are you working on next?
I'm working on some quite exciting things, actually. Like I was saying earlier, with Liam Walsh, we're involved with a new TV and film event that's happening in June called Mythos Manchester.
And this is about film finance as well.
Yeah, so that's going to be quite interesting. And I think only yesterday, I think Andy Burnham was announcing a lot of money being invested into the North for TV and film, so that's going to be good.
10.2 million.
Yeah. So that's obviously incredibly positive for the region. And we're working on a really lovely project, actually. So Liam and I knew Manny from the Stone Roses. In fact, the podcast is dedicated to him. But we're working on friends of ours, John and Sophie Macaulay, who run Grit Studios and the Manchester Art Battle. They set up a crowdfunder supported by Manny's brother Greg, and it's to create a mural of Manny where he grew up in Failsworth. So that's been a lovely project.
Manny was a bundle of joy and
it was
madness.
amazing.
He was like, I always think sometimes I get Animal from the Muppets in my mind. Sometimes he was always there, and really whenever he were at gigs, he was supporting younger artists, and he was just came across as just a lovely guy.
Yeah, but so that'll be a nice celebration of him. And I also work on something which hopefully you've heard of called Therme Manchester.
Oh yes.
Yeah, which is going to be a huge, incredible wellbeing complex at Trafford City. And it's been sort of bubbling under for a few years, but they're actually building it now.
And it is a massive space. It's where the old exhibition centre was, near the Trafford
where Event City was, And I've organised press trips to Therme Bucharest in Romania, which is kind of how the Therme Manchester will look, but Therme Manchester is going to be even bigger. And it's going to be such a big deal for Greater Manchester and the UK. It's going to be expecting 2 to 3, well, maybe 3 million visitors per year.
I think we did a chat with the Trafford Council, and it's like a game changer in terms of employment and everything else for that part.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
Yeah. So you're going to be busy then?
Hope so.
Tell us a bit about, just before we go, tell us the dream of the BBC Sound podcast. It's out now. You can subscribe to it on BBC Sound.
Yep, on BBC Sound, yeah.
Audio only, I think, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
It's you and Steve Lamacq.
Mm-hmm. Lots of archive audio as well.
Brilliant archive from the people of the time, from Tony Wilson, and new interviews as well, I think, as well.
Yeah, quite a few new interviews. Yeah.
So if you are in any way interested in Manchester, and I think even listening to it, you'll start getting interested, and you've got music bubbling on underneath as well, and you can't beat a bit
it's really well. Yeah, it's really well put together.
Yeah. So it will take you back, and you'll be thinking, maybe I should watch 24-hour Party People or something like that again, or Control.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And get on some of the vinyls and things like that. But that is out now, and the first 2 episodes are out now, but subscribe and you'll be able to hear the rest. And lots going on for you. So thank you ever so much for coming on to This Is MediaCity. This Is MediaCity is a 39 Pictures production on behalf of MediaCity and in partnership with the University of Salford. And all the team behind the scenes are graduates and undergraduates from the University of Salford and the University of Manchester. So please remember to like, subscribe and comment, and we shall see you next time.
The production team are Meg Bond, Tegan Easton, James Young, Amelia Husselby, Marnie Holdsworth Green and Rose Lonsdale.